Hey everybody, my name is Chris Tharp, and today we're going to be taking a pretty shallow look at Unity. This is really for people who either have never used Unity at all, or for people who haven't used it in quite a while. I know I fell into that group where years ago when Unity became a thing, I jumped onto it and didn't have much luck and then didn't touch it for years. Recently came back to it and have been loving it. Anyway, let's go ahead and start with our basic layout. Any assets that you create are going to be down in here, and this is literally just a folder. And the same thing goes with just different viewpoints. So you have your hierarchy here, and then your scene hierarchy here. By default, I'm using a 2D format. You don't have to do that. It really doesn't make much of a difference. In 2D and 3D, you can use either one. They're just set up or geared towards one or the other to help make things a little quicker. So it starts out with a blank scene. You've got your camera here, and then you have a sample scene. Just clicking on our camera, you can go over here and check out your inspector window. This is how you're going to be affecting your objects. So you can go over here to game object and create 2D objects, 3D objects, lights, effects. Just for fun, we'll toss a little cube in here. I'm zooming in and out with the mouse scroll wheel, and then panning just by clicking in the scroll wheel and dragging. By default, in the 2D mode, it's set up to have a 2D perspective. You can just click this right here and be able to see your cube. We're going to throw it back into 2D there. And just for fun, we'll go in, we'll add a little sphere. Now you may have seen me click up in this bar here to change the mode of interaction. I switched to the move tool. I really didn't need to do that because before we had the rectangle tool here selected, and that would have done the same thing. That's really just a matter of habit. However, the rectangle tool is very good for being able to stretch and skew objects, and you can do that with 2D or 3D objects, and it's really handy. Just Control Z to undo there. And with the move tool by itself, the huge benefit to that is your axis control. So as you see here, you have your different marked axes. I apologize if I'm going over really basic stuff, but it's, like I said, geared towards people who don't have experience with this software. And you'll learn as you're making things that being able to control or restrict movement on different axes is very nice to have. I'm going to go ahead and add in another cube and then skew it like that. And the cube has a built-in box collider. If you were working with something that did not have a built-in collider, so I'm going to go over here and right-click in our assets, go up to Create, and then select Sprites. And we'll go with a square. Drag it into the scene. Now these look identical at this point, but they're really nothing alike, at least from a 3D perspective. So one is a 2D sprite object and one is a 3D object. So they will handle differently, but if you were trying to use a 2D object and you wanted to be able to implement either physics or colliders, then you'd come up to Component, Physics 2D, and you could give it a box collider. Now obviously you saw an assortment of different collider shapes and you can pick and choose what you're working with there. Now the box collider can be used in a couple different ways. I'm not going to go over triggers today, but probably next video I do specifically about Unity. We'll talk about triggers because that's huge. Let's go in here and add in a rigid body. Now what rigid body allows us to do is be active within the physics simulation. So if we just, first of all, make sure we can see what's going on. There we go. Press play. This should just fall straight on down. Perfect. Another thing to notice, the style here, you see the 3D objects are all shaded. So they have no default light in the scene to give them any shade or, you know, any shape to them. They're all silhouetted. Whereas the 2D sprite is just an image. It just is what it is. So just for fun, while we're doing that, we can go in and add a light. Throw in a directional light. There we go. So we changed the aesthetics there, but we still have the 2D object going right through the 3D object there. Now the reason that these two objects, because our cube, this is a cube, this is a square, two-dimensional, three-dimensional. Our cube has a box collider, but it's set up for 3D physics. So what we could do, so I'm just going to delete that with it highlighted. I'm going to select our 2D sprite, and I'm going to hold Control and hit D to duplicate it. You also could have gone up to Edit, Duplicate right there. And then I'm just going to pop it right down here. So now this object has the same parameters that this one does. So it has a 2D rigid body and a 2D box collider. What we can do is set the rigid body type to static. Actually, we could even take it away altogether. So we click right here, just remove component. And now the square collides with the other square. So we know how to add some objects to our scene. We know how to make those objects reactive to the physics of each other and their environment. And we know how to throw in, a couple lights. Next step's going to be audio source. Every game needs audio, right? So I'm going to select a random object. We're just doing a test here, so it's not a big deal. We'll go over to component, add component, audio, audio source. And normally you'd select this and then there'd be a clip in here, but I did not have any clips prepared ahead of time. But you could either drag and drop your clip right in there or select it right here. And it would automatically play on awake due to this setting. You also have a loop option, and then you can affect a couple things like pitch and volume. Oh, another interesting thing to think about, there's 3D settings as well, and you can have fun with that, like if you had something moving back and forth from, side to side from the camera, it essentially would get louder as it got close to the camera. The camera in this case is holding our audio listener. So for every scene, if you want there to be audio, you need an audio listener so that they know there's something for the player to listen to, essentially. And that's pretty much the basics of the audio. Alright, last but not least, we're going to go over a little bit of animation. I know it sounds like a weird jump, but it's actually so simple and it's built right into the editor, it's hard not to address it. So all I did was just tossed another one of these square sprites in here that we created earlier. and I'm actually going to move it behind all the other objects. So you see over here in your inspector window there's order in layer. I'm going to highlight that, select -3. So it's now behind the other sprites. You can't tell just because the color matches, so we'll make it a different color. Red, why not? And that's just going to give us something to animate, and we can animate it in a few different ways. So we're going to go up here to our window, animation, animation. There we are. Then we're going to select our object again, and it's going to say this has no animation. Would you like to create one? We just click create and name it whatever we like. Now whenever we click this button right here, it's going to record what you're doing at that point in time. The time is referenced here in your animation timeline, and this is done in seconds. So this entire area from here to here is 1 second, and you can vary that however you want. So just for fun, you can animate literally anything. I'm going to hit the record button. We'll go over here and we'll select our red color, and we'll just move it around a little bit, leaving it red, but you see these little points pop up identifying factors that we've recorded within that animation. So what we can do is just hop over here to about 1 second, select that again, and change it to whatever you want. Green. Now it's essentially going to do a tween between the 2 points. This is keyframe animation, and it's so useful, especially built into the Unity editor like this. When I first started using Unity, it did not have this, and animation was a whole different nightmare. Using this method, you can do all sorts of amazing things. So I'm actually going to stop this. I played it by hitting the spacebar, just highlight, hit spacebar, and I can show you how to string animations together. So we have our new animation that we made, and then we can go down here, select new animation, and hit create new clip. We can just call this new animation 2. Once again, we'll hit the record button, and you see it's already popped up here in our animator. I'm going to go back over to scene. And our second animation we can do with movement. So we can grab it, move it around a little bit. That's going to tell us, or tell Unity that we want that position saved, and it tells you right there. And then we can change our timing. Let's go for 1 second again and pop it over here. Now it strings between those 2 keyframes, and you can add them wherever you like in the middle. So I just clicked on the halfway mark, scooched it over, and just like that, you've changed your animation. So you can add keyframes in the middle, afterwards, whatever you want to do. Throw another one over here just for fun, just like that. And a lot of these you'll want them looped. So a good thing to do is you can essentially highlight your first frame, select whatever you want your loop point to be. In this case it'd be 2 seconds, and then I will just hit Control C to copy our selected points, and then Control V. That will cause our animation to be looping so that it doesn't have any snapping or popping at the end when it tries to transfer. Then we can go back over to our animator up here. So we have our new animation where the colors change, and then we have our new animation 2 where we have movement. What we can do is right click on new animation, hit make transition, and then connect it to the new animation 2 node. Then you can select that connector, and it will allow you to essentially create a transition, and it gives you a nice little preview window here as well. You can have these transition to where it's just one and then the other. So a nice cut. Or you can have them sort of bleed into each other a little bit. You can get some weird effects doing this as well. Let's see. Alright. So that's a quick overview of Unity. That should get you into the basics. I'd say get in there, start playing around. Throw in some objects, throw in some lights, make something move, add some color to it, have fun. Thanks for hanging out, and please like and subscribe. Maybe come and see the next one. Bye, guys.